Contingency log number 97. Codename: Giant Robots. The mecha genre is likely one of, if not, one of the most recognizable genres in terms of fiction. The idea of a single human piloting a massive machine, either fighting other mechas in space, or perhaps battling alien creatures of equal size back on Earth. Typically, when picturing the pilot of a mecha, one would assume it to be someone who'd had years of experience, likely spent years learning the craft, becoming one of the most respectable pilots one has ever seen, though more often than not, it's a teenager in the seat. I may not be one to talk when it comes to putting teens into dangerous situations, but I would at the very least wait for them to be ready both physically and emotionally before throwing them into battle. But among the various of people who have gotten into the robot, on occasion someone will break this mold, becoming something completely unconventional, though even I was a bit surprised by the pilot for this contingency. But I'm getting ahead of myself. First, allow me to explain the origin. Beginning in a war over a millennium from now, humanity would find themselves under attack by an alien species, a war which would rage for a few years, and it would be humanity on the verge of losing it all. But they had a single hope left, a prototype machine which they would give the name Megas, the plan being to go back in time during what was considered the most important battle the war had seen, hoping that with the power of the prototype that may be able to tip the scales in their favor. Plans like this typically have a chance of going wrong, and this was no exception, as a last-minute assault from the enemy would not only damage the prototype, but it would also cause the time jump to overshoot by a considerable time, instead landing in a New Jersey junkyard in the 1930s. It was here where a man by the name of Harold Kuplowski, or Coupe as he is normally called, would find the remains of Megas, obtaining it over an agreed-upon price of $2, something I'm not entirely convinced he ever paid. Coupe is not what one would typically consider as pilot material. Even the woman who was originally supposed to pilot Megas has called him into question, and in truth, I can see why some may be quick to second-guess him, as not only would he not fit the mold of a typical mecha pilot, but looking at his background, he didn't seem to do much anything else other than gaming from his sofa. And yet, he'd managed to repair Megas, replacing where the head had been with what I believe to be a 1970s Plymouth Barracuda. But he'd done more than just repair Megas and give it a new paint job. Coupe would also give it some more personal touches, not just managing to make the robot operational with a gear shift, but also through the use of several different gaming consoles. I'd asked both Cyborg and Mr. Terrific on how difficult this would be to accomplish. Haven't seen either of them in a few days, but I'm sure it's fine. But along with somehow making Megas controllable through every gaming console available to Coupe at the time, he'd also managed to reprogram it, giving Megas not just new means of combat, but also capable of using attacks it had been unable to do before. Not just a near-endless number of machine gun fire, but Megas is also equipped with a wide variety of energy-based weapons, nothing one wouldn't expect to see from a giant robot. But there seems to be something else to it. Something I am unsure if it were the original design, or perhaps something Coupe himself had managed to program into it. But Mega seems to be capable of adapting to the situation. One such example being when Coupe managed to create a new attack, one which was stated to not be programmed into Megas, though he himself didn't seem all too surprised. He'd even managed to force a merger with Megas and a different legally distinct group of pilots. Maybe it's possible that to some degree, Coupe is unknowingly a genius when it comes to mechanical programming and machine building. It's hard to say, but what I do know is that I cannot afford to take half measures when up against this machine. As while he had no formal training, Coupe has been capable of battling some of the strongest enemies the galaxy had to offer, and while he may seem to be a light-hearted, often operating at a small brain capacity, someone you may never think would turn to the dark side. The truth is, we've seen in future where this can happen, one where Coupe grew too attached to battle, becoming a dark warlord who would destroy his own world as the aliens he'd battle would in the far future. I don't see this as some alternate future, but as a possibility that could still transpire. Though deep down, I can only hope I'm wrong. Contingencies of the past have allowed me to research several different mecha building methods. But even then, I have my doubts on if I'd manage to match that of Mega's. Not just from what the machine can accomplish, but also due to Coupe's completely unpredictable fighting style. Even if I could build a mecha that could match Mega's, I'd need someone who could match Coupe just as equally. It would require someone just as unpredictable with his actions, maybe even someone who is crazier than Coupe himself. On an unrelated note, Red Hood has agreed to be the pilot. That said, placing Red Hood into a machine and allowing him to check off something from his bucket list, his words, not mine, is only a part of the equation here. Whether or not Hood can defeat him on his own is not the question here, but rather how would I be capable of increasing his chances of winning? And through my research, I've come up with two solutions. One weakness which can completely disable Megas is one to being pushed too far, or rather being pushed to a point where the machine's engines will overheat. And while I'm more than sure some measures were put in place to prevent this, I think I have a means to get around this. I've faced many heat-based villains in the past and managed to research their weaponry. In time, I was capable of creating a heat gun which operates more like a ranged microwave. My plan being that, while Red Hood battles Coupe, I will aid him from the shadows, hoping to further tax the Mega's internal systems. With any luck, we'll be capable of pushing it to overheat sooner rather than later. Time is very important when it comes to this contingency, especially if it comes to battle. As when it comes to combat, collateral damage is a 100% guarantee chance of happening, and the longer the fight goes on, the more the damage will spread. But there is also another means, though a bit more drastic, and that comes down to the head of the machine. The one which is the main mechanism for controlling it. If I want to prevent this from being a fight, I would need to target it. When not in use, Megas is hidden under Coupe's garage, where the car will remain unattended until the need to use it were to arise once more. I've managed to tamper with the vehicle slightly. It's not a virus or some method of explosive, as I cannot risk something like that being picked up during any diagnostics of Megas. Instead, I've added a fail-safe, something that would blend in with the near-endless buttons inside the car, though only I am able to activate it. It is, in the simplest form of explaining, an ejector command, one which will cause the car to detach from Megas, as well as locking any attempts to place it back. Truth be told, this may not come down to whether or not Coupe becomes a threat as he did in that one future timeline, as there is a chance I may need to get involved due to the damage he can cause even when trying to protect his city. I understand that collateral damage can be a consequence when it comes to fighting opponents with no regard for those around them. But Coupe himself seems to go out of his way to cause as much damage as he can, costing the city of New Jersey a near countless amount in repairs. I will try to find him some guidance. Perhaps with some time he can learn to fight without having to level the city, though I have my doubts. If you also have a character you wish for me to cover, or just want to support this channel, I'll have a link to my Ko-fi page. There will also be a Google Doc with the list of characters who have ever been done or already commissioned by others.